the control of the software defined by the user is working according to the requirements of a user is going to be assessed. Quality and reliability of software are the two important definitions that defines the product metric. The time required to execute a specific function code that is defined under dynamic metrics. If this condition is not satisfied, it has to move to the next block, that is to the else block, that is called as another function point. Hello everyone, it is Dr. Ravi Kumar YB. In today's session, we shall learn about the software metrics that is defined in terms of the characteristic or the measure of a characteristics in software engineering. So, as I have already discussed with you all in the previous sessions that a software characteristics or a good software characteristics is defined in terms of transitional, operational and maintenance. These are the very good characteristics of a software. If that is the case, what is the meaning of metric and how these metrics defines the quality of a good software? That is the topic of our discussion today. In today's session, you are going to learn about the software metrics and how the project is going to be implemented and tested, verified and completed within a stipulated time assigned to that particular team within a company. If that is the case, a software metric is a measure of a good software characteristics which are measurable or countable. That is, the characteristics of a good software must always be measurable and countable. That means whether it is good or not is going to be assessed with the help of a metric. If that is a metric, what are the different characteristics that defines a metric? That is, software metrics are valuable for many reasons, including measuring software's performance, planning, work items, measuring productivity and many other uses. I am using the word first one, performance here. Performance indicates that whether the time taken to respond for any input given to the system is properly in time or not. That is called as a performance. If any printer output is given to the system, that is, if any user gives any command to the system in the form of printing the soft copy of the item which is displayed to him, if it is printed successfully within the specified time, then we say that the performance of a software is good, so that the user is working efficiently. The resources of the system are being utilized properly. Then planning work items. What is the meaning of planning of work items? Suppose if there is any work to be carried out, it has to be planned and executed according to the stipulated time requirement. Then measuring the productivity and many other uses. These are the different types of information that needs to be measured in terms of many reasons. Within the software development process, many metrics that are all connected. The software metrics are similar to the 4 functions of management, which is the first one. Planning is the first management, second organization, third one control, fourth one or improvement. So these are the functions of management. First one is planning and it has to be executed. That means planning is the first phase of the functions of the management, that is in case of software metrics, that is the first function, which is the second function. The second function is organization, whether the planned information is organized effectively or not is going to be assessed based upon this organization of software modules within a project. Then control, whether the control of the software defined by the user is working according to the requirements of a user is going to be assessed with the help of a characteristic functionality called control, which is the fourth functionality, improvement. Is there any chances for improving or adding any additional functionality to the existing system is a topic of interest in terms of four functionality of management of computer software. If that is the case, we shall see the metrics in terms of classification. How these classifications are done, that is based upon the product metrics, that is based upon the product which is going to be developed. We classify it as one type of software metric, and based upon the process metric we are going to classify the software metrics into another type. So basically we have two types of software metrics. The first one is the product metric. Second one is process metric. So we have the product metrics which is defined in terms of size and complexity of software. Then quality and reliability of software are the two important definitions that defines the product metric. Suppose if I am going to develop a product for any of the requirements of a client, then it has to be measured or assessed based upon the size of a software. Size may be in terms of the number of lines of code, also called LOC. Lines of code written to meet the requirements of a client is called as the size of a software. That is the size. And complexity. What is the complexity? Whether it is very difficult to perform the task or very easy to perform the task is very, very important in case of this product metrics. Some of the software products are very easy to implement, and some of the products are sometimes very difficult to implement. So in order to achieve the desired result, we must assess two important metrics in case of classification. That is, the first one is product metrics, second one is process metrics. In case of product metrics, we are going to define the product metrics in terms of size and this complexity of the software. And which is the second functionality that defines the metric, product metric? That is this second one, quality and reliability. These are the two important types of functionality that defines the metric, product metric. So if that is the case, the two important software characteristics or functionalities are this, that is the size. Size may be defined in terms of LOC or lines of code, or LOC. Then what is the meaning of complexity? That is, complexity may be defined in terms of the time required to execute a program or a software is called as a complexity. So these two are in one of the functionality. That is the size and complexity of a software. What is the space required to execute the program? That is defined in terms of number of lines of code, LOC. And which is the other metric, which is the other functionality that defines the metrics, product? That is the complexity. What complexity? Time complexity. What is the time required to perform a specific task is a concept of understanding here. That is, the space and time complexity are very, very important in case of defining a product metric. Which is the other metric, other functionality? Reliability and quality. Whether the quality of a software product is good, we state that it is a very good software, and it is reliable according to the requirements of a client, then it is called as a very good software. Otherwise, it is not called as a good software. So these two important functionalities defines the product metrics. So if you see that the next important metric, that is process metric. So we have the product metrics here, first one, second one, process metric. Again, this product metric is divided into two important types, that is static metrics and dynamic metrics. Below this static metrics, we have the size metrics, that is the lines of code that is already defined in the previous slide, that is this. Below this static metrics, we have the lines of code or the size metrics. Then we have design metrics, control flow metrics, information metrics, weighted metrics, then data structure metrics, software science metrics, then testability. All these are different types of metrics which you will come across below static metrics. Below size metrics, we have lines of code, also called LOC. Then token count, then function count. All these are defines the size metrics. Then under the control flow metrics, we have function points, that is FC1, FC2, FC3, FC4, FC5. All these are different types of function counts. Let me tell you the function count. What is the meaning of function count in the next and subsequent slides, but not now. In this case, we have the size metrics, which is defined in terms of lines of code, token count and function count. If I consider the static metric with information metrics, what is the name of the software? That is also countable here. In this case, we have the product metrics. Under this product metrics, we will come across static metrics and dynamic metrics. Under static metrics, we have different types of metrics. And again, under size metrics, we have lines of code, token count and function count. All these are different types of metrics which you will come across under static metrics. Under dynamic metrics, you will not come across anything. If you find any metrics, that is the time, that is the time required to execute a specific function code, that is defined under dynamic metrics. But that depends on the speed of a computer. In few of the supercomputers, the execution of a program is very, very less. That is, the time required to execute a program is very less. But whereas in the older computers, which you have seen in the earlier days, if you run the same program on those older computers without having any specific processor architecture, then it is very difficult to run those programs in the same olden days computers. It may take more time to execute the same program. That is defined in terms of dynamic metrics. Then if you look at this process metrics, these process metrics are the measures of various characteristics of the software development process. For example, the efficiency of fault tolerance. Suppose if during the execution of a program or during the execution of a project, if there is any exception or a mistake that may arise during the execution of a program, must be handled properly. If it is not handled properly, that leads to an unwanted data into the database that must not be incorporated into the database. That is called as tolerance. How those fault tolerance is going to be handled, that is called as process metrics. Now, to measure the characteristics of methods, techniques and tools that are used for developing the software, that is also very, very important. Now, if you look at this, there are different types of metrics, that is internal metrics, and we have external metrics. What is the meaning of internal metrics? Lines of code. that is example lines of code defines the internal metric, also called as size matrix. What is the meaning of external metrics? Let me keep it in simple terms, that is portability of a software and interoperability of a software, then whether it is reliable, functionality, usability, etc. That is etc. may be interoperability, whether the software which is developed for Windows operating system is also going to work on Unix operating system, is also going to work on Android operating system, is also going to work on Linux operating system, then it is called as an interoperable functionality of a software. So, if the external metrics are met, then it is called as a very good software. Similarly, we have an internal metric, that is the size metric. The size metric is defined in terms of number of lines of code required to execute or complete the task of the client. That is called as a size metric. So we have the internal metrics as well as external metrics. In case of internal metrics, we have the lines of code. In case of external metrics, we will come across the reliability, interoperability, portability. All these are certain types of external metrics that defines the good quality of a software. Now, moving on to the next type of metrics, that is hybrid metrics. Hybrid, the name says that it is a combination of those metrics. That is this cost per function point, where FP stands for function point metric. What is the meaning of function point metric? Now here I will define the meaning of functional point. Suppose if there is a token, if A is greater than B, printf the value of A is greater than B. Else printf the value of B is greater than A. Now, in this code segment, I have if-else block here, where if block corresponds to whether A is greater than B. If this condition is satisfied, this block is executed. If this condition is not satisfied, then it skips the if block and comes to the else block and executes this statement. So if that is the case, which is the function point here? I have a token called if here. Immediately after if, I have an open parenthesis. Then I have one token called A. I have another token called greater symbol. I have another token called B. I have another token called greater symbol. So it keeps on counting all those types of tokens, inbuilt tokens which is used in the program, as well as the user defined token which is defined by the programmer. That is, if is one of the token, colon open parenthesis is another token, A is another token, greater symbol is another token, B is another token, close parenthesis is another token. It comes across all these types of tokens. Once when this header is completed, comes to the braces, open braces. Then we have a printf statement, this statement here. So then immediately after that we have this statement here, closing braces. Then we have a else block here. Then we have opening braces here. Then again there is no repetitions here, because already I have come across this kind of statement here. If that is the case, it simply puts it here and equivalent machine code is assigned to this. That is this. Then we have a printf statement here. Then we have the closing braces here. So if that is the case, each of these functionalities or function point, at this point there is a junction whether to proceed with if block or with else block. If it is with if block, that has to be considered as one of the function point. Based upon this condition, if this condition is not satisfied, it has to move to the next block, that is to the else block, that is called as another function point. That is defined in terms of these inbuilt and user defined tokens. That is called as a function point. What is the meaning of project metrics then? Project metrics are the metrics used by the project manager to check the project's progress from time to time. That is, whether the progress of the project development is going according to their requirements, according to their plan which they had set up earlier, is going to be checked from time to time. That is called as a project metrics. Whether it may be in terms of time, that is, see here, in terms of time, or it may be in terms of cost. What is the expenditure that is going to be spent on that project is very, very important here. That is called as time, cost. Cost is measured in terms of budget, that is resources required to build a software. All those are certain important types of metrics or the characteristics of a project metric that defines the project metric. So that is called as the project metric. If you look at these types of metrics, you also state that the project proceeds the project with project manager, and the project manager will keep checking its progress from time to time and compare the efforts needed to complete the software product and the cost or the budget required to implement the software code, and then the time within the original efforts, cost and the time. That is, what is the time schedule that they have, whether the project is going to be completed within the schedule they have. That is also going to be monitored by the project manager. Then we have, also you need to understand that these metrics are used to decrease the development cost in terms of time, efforts and risks. That is, you need to understand these metrics have been defined to reduce the development cost in terms of budget. By following the principles and procedures of software engineering, we are going to reduce the development cost in terms of budget. That is also going to be considered as a very one of the good characteristics of a software development. Then, as quality improves, the number of errors and time as well as the cost required are also reduced. When the good quality of a software is expected, obviously we need to find out that the time, that is the efficiency, reliability, the cost, all these characteristics must be met very effectively. Then we state that it is a good quality software. That is called as a metric. If that is the case, what is the advantage of using the software metrics? The first advantage is comparative study of various design methodology of system softwares. For analysis, that is the second one, comparison and critical study of different programming language concerning their characteristics. For example, if I take the C#, .NET programming, it has got its own inbuilt functionalities, that is inbuilt functionality. That is, the inbuilt functionality may be defined in terms of the libraries supported in the .NET programming. Similarly, if you see to that, what is the library supported in Python? Suppose if you want to work out with any of the image processing task, then you have to go for some of the cutting edge technologies like Python. Because using this Python, you can have any of the libraries like TensorFlow, Keras, OpenCV, that is computer vision package. All these are different types of packages that helps you to detect the phase. For example, if you open the camera of your mobile phones, immediately you will see that the region of interest is created around your face. How it is going to be done? That is, the technology that is going to be used for that purpose makes the programming language useful. For example, if you consider the Python programming language, you have a library called list of libraries. All these are open source libraries. All these are open source libraries. What is the meaning of open source library? An open source library is freely available library. You can download, install and execute in your systems. That is called as open source library. So these are the characteristics that defines a good quality of a software, and then it is also an advantage for the programmer during the development of the software. Then, which is the next advantage? In comparing and evaluating the capabilities of and productivity of people involved in software development. That is the resources. That is the resources. That is called as resources. Then, in the preparation of software quality specifications, this has to be the specification. He has to meet this specification within the specified time, and this has to be the quality of the software. That is called the quality, good quality of a software. That is software quality is measured in terms of the metrics, in terms of lines of code, whether it may be a static metric or it may be a dynamic metric. In case of static metric, you are going to consider the space required to do that. In case of dynamic metrics, you are going to consider the time required to execute the program or to the project. That is called as this. Then if that is the case, we have few more advantages here. Verification and validation or assessment of the software requirements and are going to be checked. That is also very easy in case of having the software metrics in case of development process. Then, in making inference about the efforts to be put in the design and development of the software system, that is, it requires minimal efforts to develop the software if these quality metrics are considered. That is one very important. In getting an idea about the complexity of the code. What is the complexity of a code? If the code is very tedious and very difficult to follow, then it is very, very complex. If the code can be implemented very easily in any of the programming languages, then it is not of concern. That is also one of the important characteristics we need to consider here as an advantage of developing the software. Then if that is the case, in taking decisions regarding further division of a complex module is to be done or not, whether the complex module are going to be incorporated in the existing module or not is going to be checked with respect to the metrics available or supported in that particular software development. Then, in guiding resource manager, who is called as a resource manager? The resource manager is one who is providing all those resources for the completion of the project. He is called as a resource manager or the project manager who keeps monitoring the progress of the software development. That is very, very important. Then, if you look at the advantages of this in comparison and making design trade-offs between software development and maintenance. Once the software is developed, it has to be delivered to the client. After delivering the software product to the client, what is the design required? What is the complexity involved after the delivery of software to the client? What is the complex involved during the development of the software product? Both must be compared and the order must be taken according to that assessment, whether it may be in terms of budget or it may be in terms of time, whether it is profitable to the company. Everything must be taught. Everything must be taught properly. That is called as this comparison progress. And in providing feedback to software managers about the progress and quality during various phases of software development life cycle. We have to give the feedback to the manager who manages all these teams. in the allocation of testing resources for testing the code. That is, once when the software is developed, it has to be given to the testing team before being delivered into the client. Then it has to be tested by the testing team. So that is also very, very important here. Then what is the disadvantage of this? The application of software metrics is not always easy, and in some cases it is difficult and costly. Whether the space required may also go beyond 5,000 lines of code, beyond 50,000 lines of code in case of some complex systems. It is very difficult to assess that. That is the disadvantage of this. Then which is the verification? Verification and validation of software metrics are based on historical or empirical data whose validity is difficult to verify. Whether the developed software is working according to the requirements of a client with the existing resources is very, very important to assess. But it is very difficult to assess. That is one of the disadvantages of software metrics. Thank you very much. With this, we shall conclude this session. And if you have any questions with respect to the topics which I have already discussed today about the software metrics, you can come back to me during the live sessions. Thank you very much. Thank you all.